This one goes out to the Artcasters. Ooh, Artcasters! I say you're catching your spell, Artcasters. Catching your spell. Ooh, you're gonna cast that spell. Strike a hell. Whoa! Ooh. Aye, aye. Aye, aye. Aye, aye.
Welcome to Artcasters. I am Joshua Kemble. We're going to make the rounds. Everybody to introduce themselves. We have a returning guest that you guys might recognize. So we'll make the rounds and tell everybody where to find stuff, and then get into the topic. So you're on my channel. If you haven't yet, you should hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications when we're about to go live. And you can see live streams and Artcasters episodes here. You can also support indie comics by buying 2 stories in Jacob's apartment after you fund certain people's Kickstarters. I think 2 gentlemen that are here. Those gentlemen. I'm no gentleman. And then let's see here. What else? And then music. Just check out Joshua Kemble on Spotify or streaming platforms everywhere. Hello to Jim, Mydrin, Dylan, hello chat. All right, so that's basically it for my stuff. Scott, where can everybody find you and your stuff, and where's the most important place for them to check out in regards to your work right now?
Yeah, really the only thing right now I'm pushing, to not make it too complicated, is just my comic book on Kickstarter. Go to youngandthedead.com. There's probably a link in the description, and also right there under my name. But yeah, if you click on that, just check out the Kickstarter if you haven't already. We're like $30 away from the first stretch goal. So I don't know, maybe we could hit that tonight. That'd be awesome if you haven't backed it already. Because what happens if we hit that stretch goal, then you and everyone else is backing at the physical level gets a 3D print with 3D glasses included free with whatever you pledged at. So, and then I will also unveil the next stretch goal. So hopefully we can make that happen. So if you've been thinking about the campaign, you could be the one to give everyone. It could be you. You could be like, hey, you're welcome. You just gave everyone and yourself a 3D print. So check it out.
I love it.
youngandthedead.com.
I backed it a couple days ago. Now I wish I didn't, so I could do it today.
Nice,
you know,
guys.
has anybody on Kickstarter done a stretch goal that was like a Stretch Armstrong by any chance? That would be genius.
Yeah, but wait, a stretch arm.
You'd have to find. You have to connect
That's
somehow.
True. That's true. It would probably have to have something to do with it. Well, if it were a Stretch Armstrong that was a giant kaiju and mech story, Gaz, where can people check you out, and what's the most important place for them to go right now to support your work?
Well, I'm all over as Gazbot, Etsy, all that stuff. Oh, the Horror 4 sticker. Look at Scott repping.
Yes.
But right now, I am in the pre-launch for Kickstarter. It's live right now. If you go to thehorrora4.com, or you can just look for me on Kickstarter. And the actual launch will be, I believe, this Monday coming up. So there's the pre-launch now you can sign up for, and then everything will be revealed then. And this is for issue 3 of my independent kaiju comic, The Horror A4. Josh said it's a kaiju versus mech story, which is not incorrect. There are mechs in it, but I would classify it more as a kaiju story whose protagonist is a teenage, scrappy, punky girl. Because the mech aspect of it is like tertiary to the story. There are robots in it, but it's about a big monster and the way that people react to it. And this girl Boots is the main character as far as the humans go, which was in the sticker that Scott just held up.
I love it. And Horror A4 has been something you've been working on for a long time, and it's
Scott talks about. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, Scott talks about how it's been somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 years to put his book together, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna beat that. I'm gonna have 5 issues instead of 6, and I'm going to have more than 10 years by the time I'm done. So, Scott, you're the Flash compared to me.
It's okay.
Well, I just want to let everyone know I've already signed up for to be alerted, and I'm going to back it as soon as I get that alert. I've been waiting
even if
for
people can't back it, just signing up and sharing it, that helps a lot. You don't have to spend any money to help me.
And
Yeah,
note to guys, never share any more spoilers unless you know you're going to put the thing out.
I've only shared that a spoiler.
I'm just joking.
No, but it's funny
because I know kind of a big spoiler, and that's another reason why you need to back this, because there is sort of a big, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but a big reveal.
Reveal is probably a better way. But it is funny because other than the people I let read the script when I first did it, you're the only one on this show off the air that I revealed it to. And I realized how big of a mistake it was that I never told anybody.
I don't care because I still want to read it. You know,
I think it makes it more intriguing, but I do think it's good to keep it under wraps.
I will say this is the issue, which is why it's not like a twist at the end of an M. Night Shyamalan thing where like that's the last thing you find out. You find out what we're talking about in issue 3. So there's that at least. You don't know how the story ends. You just know what happens in issue 3.
Which is great because that really puts your stamp on it. Like, I mean, the whole thing's got your stamp on it, but I feel like that particular part of it makes it very unique and exciting.
Thank you.
So Horror A4, we at horrora4.com. So we have a website to go to pre-order, which is great, right?
Yeah, I'm glad I saw Gaz did that. You might have done it in the last campaign too. I don't know.
I did not. No, I cribbed a lot of what I'm doing from you, Scott. I watched a couple because, like you, I haven't done a Kickstarter in a while, so things have changed. And I watched a few videos, but like I didn't do every. As a matter of fact, I just made all my vlog videos are way behind. But I literally was saying to the camera earlier, if I was smart, I would have copied everything Scott did because he did it exactly right. What I did was kind of picked and choose a few things to just make mine a little better, because I think we also came at it differently. Where you were like had it done and you were looking for the exact right time to release it, whereas I'm like, I have to get this. I'm doing a show the last weekend of May, first weekend of June called Kiaju Brooklyn in Brooklyn, New York, and I wanted to have the book, either Kickstarter either going or the book done, one or the other, to have for that show. So my goal was to get the book done and have the Kickstarter on by the time that show happened. So unlike Scott, like you did a really good job waiting, and I was just go, just start, you know.
Yeah, I'm actually now because I wanted to get my books back in time for Fan Fusion, which is like June 6th, and I was waiting to see if I was going to get to a point where I could do offset printing and do a larger run, which it looks like I'm going to hit. So I reached out to some people because our friends had recommended a printer, and I said, well, what's kind of the time frame I'm looking at? And they said about a month. And I'm like, okay. So what I'll probably end up doing is probably just putting it on my credit card and then get it started before I actually even wrap up the Kickstarter.
Would you just have issue 6 but not the trade for the show, or you?
No, I'm talking about the trade. The issue 6 will be print on demand, just because there's not as many of those that people want, and plus once you go to trade, no one's going to buy an issue 6. They may buy an issue number 1 single, but they're not going to buy issue 6. So, and that's kind of the feedback I've got from everyone else. So you want to sell out of all your single issues, which I'm getting close to. So that's good.
Nice.
But because once you put it in trade, you're going to have a hard time selling.
That makes sense.
Issues.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty true. Yeah.
I wonder, though, if the exception, because this time, well, this is like a little bit of a preview because I only have my pre-launch page up, but it will be revealed to everyone else and to you watching the show now. Here's your scoop. I'm going to have 2 variant covers by different artists than me.
Oh, cool.
Oh, nice.
Which I've never done before. And I could see when I put the trade out, people aren't necessarily going to just want issue 1, 2, 3, 4. But if I have some left over of these other artist variants, I could see that being appealing because it's different.
Yeah, that is true. And I still have a few. Like last time I had like a variant for each issue, which technically I probably should have done at least 1 variant for issue 6. So but yeah, I just wanted to focus on the trade and also give people the option for that 1 single issue.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like with the just the finishing the entire thing, you're getting start to finish of this story, Scott, is pretty much like a that's a reward in itself, you know. I want that to be a circling thing. I don't want that to be a like, oh, guest cover artist, you know. Yeah. So for Gaz, you've been working on it a while. It's a really cool story. It requires a lot of detail and like kind of world building and stuff, like with you know, again, really complicated thing. You have to draw quite a lot and turn around.
You know,
And,
I'll say something. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
well, so I was just going to say that it is apropos. I think that like the topic we're going to kind of talk about that you wanted to talk about is persistence and perseverance.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of curious, like to kind of kick it off, like if you're not persistent and perseverant, if somebody's like watching this and they're not persistent and perseverant, what would you recommend them in regards to getting into comics or making comics?
I mean, you're setting me up to say something mean. What would I say? Well, don't, you know, but that's,
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
That's a glib answer.
Yeah.
I would say work on it, figure it out, do a few minutes a day, do a couple days a week, find something that works for you. And again, I struggled for years to get this issue done. I had a lot of stuff going on in my life and everything. Who doesn't? But, you know, and what I found was a few things fell into place that made things easier, of course. But I found that I had a pocket of a couple hours a day, not a full work day, not even a half day, but a couple hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. And I said, I am going to not play video games. I'm going to not fiddle with my toys. You can see I have boxes of toys I should be put away. But I'm not doing anything. When I have those hours, that's making comics. Until this comic, and I also stopped doing other art. I was doing prints, I was doing commissions. I said I got to just focus on the comic, and it took forever, but it got done quicker. It took me about 6 months to finish the book that I'd been working on for years.
Yeah.
Which is terrible that it took me years, but it's that thing of like, oh, I did as much in these 6 months with just a couple hours a week as I did for years.
Yeah.
And some of that time I had all day. You know, some of those, you know, but I just wasn't using it for one reason or another. So
Yeah.
I just became the tortoise. You know, just one step at a time. Jason Voorhees, just one foot in front of the other. There were days I would spend an hour and partially ink one panel and be like, this is a waste.
Yeah.
What am I doing? But over time, by the end of that week, I'm like, okay, well, I did get half a page done. And maybe 2 weeks later, I got a page done, but it was moving forward. Yeah. And I just built up that muscle. And I remember, and if you watch my vlogs, because for those that don't know, I have an art vlog channel, Gazbot, and my videos are way
really
behind.
Good. Gaz does some of my favorite like art vlogs.
You're very kind.
Like you're really good with the way you kind of communicate like what is happening to a camera. It's just you're very unique at it, and and I love your approach.
I just try to make it conversational as much as I can. But where it is now is right at the beginning of this turning point, and it's funny because I remember I'm saying 6 months, it might be a little more low. I was doing like an hour. I'm like, oh, I managed to do an hour, but I got to take a break and go do something else. Or, oh, I can't believe it. I did an hour and a half today. But now, a few months later, when I do 3 hours, it's like, ding, I got to be done. You know, it just goes so quick because I do it all the time. It's like going to the gym or whatever. So people say I don't go to the gym, you know, but it is, you know, I couldn't say, hey, I'm going to draw 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. It wouldn't work. I mean, maybe it would for some people, but not for me, especially because I had the rust of specifically working on comics. I've been drawing. But once I decided this is what I'm going to do and started doing it a little bit at a time, I may have said this before. I saw this thing. I always make analogies that I get a little wrong, you know, but there was some wrestling team, some American wrestling team that was going to fight some Russian wrestling team. And I don't know about sports either, but the thing was the Americans would get together and train as hard as they could for like 3 days a week and then go home and whatever. The Russians wouldn't train nearly as hard, and they would just do it like, you know, a couple hours here, a couple hours over there, but they did it every day. They would just sort of casually wrestle all the time like it wasn't a big deal, and the Americans would be like, it's wrestling time, and go until they were burned out. And it's that, I think, Josh, I think you and I have talked about this, maybe the consistency, not intensity, where I find, and I find this to be true for most people, but, you know, there are exceptions, and everybody's different, but I find for me, if I try to force myself, like I have, Saturday, I'm going to draw for 12 hours. That is less useful to me than putting in 2 hours a day for 6 days. I feel like that just works. It gets you in that headspace and it just works better.
Yeah. I've been thinking, I mean, I've thought about this for years, you know, because, like for me, like there's a bunch of stuff in my life changed positively with, just making time daily for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say now, like my big struggle is just being forgiving if I miss a day, you know, which is weird. because it's the reverse of the old problem, But like, but
I think it comes from
find
knowing that there was a time when you weren't doing your best and weren't being consistent. So you're afraid. Well, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm projecting that if I miss a day, I'm afraid. Oh no, I can't let this become a thing where I'm missing all my days now. I gotta, like.
Yeah, because I know how quick that becomes a week, and I know how quick a week becomes a month, and how quick a month becomes 3 months, and then you're like, wait a minute, I was a cartoonist, It happens pretty quick. So, I think what you're describing is really cool. I think it's also like the statement that you were saying about spreading 6 hours throughout a week, like in 2 hour intervals. Why that's more important? I've been trying to think about this. Like, why is just the jamming when you're inspired and just doing 12-hour days. Well, for one thing, like Gaz, you're a parent now, so like that option's off the table most of the time. And then the other is like, I think it's about conditioning your habits. Like you're almost you're developing a positive addiction, and we serve our negative addictions all the time, but I feel like it's like positive addiction where
it also
you
keeps
start feeding this thing. Yeah, and you get used to like when you get home, like I got this window, like you get used to like using and exploiting those windows. And then like you said, Gaz, like it very quickly does be like I gotta stop. Like whereas at first it's like just a nightmare to even get through, like let's say you commit to like 30 minutes. It's like a lot of the time it'll be a nightmare to get through that 30 minutes for like a week or two, but it does switch around where it becomes the thing to look forward to every day. It's really interesting. I think it's conditioning our minds. That's my take on it. I don't know.
And I think helping.
Go ahead, guys. Sorry.
No, you're right. Let Scott talk. You and me been talking the most.
Oh no, I didn't say anything.
I was just curious what your take on that is, Scott, with the daily kind of showing up for a thing. Do you think that's...
I mean, I don't know how many times you've done it, Gaz, but I've done I think I've done the 100 Days of Making Comics, probably officially like maybe 4 or 5 times, and then unofficially not blogging about it. I mean, I just make that commitment. Like the last time when I was working my comic, it was working on it for an hour a day, every day. And like you said, that stuff just adds up. So if you if it's 30 minutes a day, I think is the official challenge, but if you add an extra hour, I said at least an hour. So, and that with this final issue, that coupled with the Slack method, which I don't know if you've heard us talk about this.
You mentioned it, I think on the last one, and I didn't know what it was, and I tried to look it up, and I'm like, I don't think this is what he's talking about.
It's not like a hugely known thing. It's our friend Scott Loss kind of created it. He's one half of the Making Comics podcast, but the idea is that you have. Let's see if I can.
I'm just taking my socks off.
Him up to explain it, but so let's say you have an overview, and this is the way I understand it. Let's say you have an overview, like you can start off with your thumbnails, and you have them all out, so you can see exactly what page you have to do, and then from there you go, okay. Today, if you just start today, I feel like working on this page because it's got a cool monster and I want to draw a monster. So you pick that page, and then maybe the next day you're like, okay, and it could be penciling, and then maybe you just go to it's basically a non-linear way to create your comic.
I've heard of this.
Basically creating where the heat is. So whatever you're interested in, then the idea is, or maybe some days you're like, okay, I feel like a challenge. I'm going to work on backgrounds today. But the idea is that the more you chip away at it, and when you can step back and see, and this is the way I do it. You can step back and look at your kind of. I take whatever I'm done and I copy it and put it where my thumbnail is, so I can kind of see what.
Isn't there a danger?
These areas fill in.
Isn't there a danger though, ending with like a bunch of cars and backgrounds to draw because you keep?
Well, here's the thing. The thing is, when you get to that point, it could be that, but by that point, you're kind of in the home stretch, and then you see all this other stuff. So it's not that stuff's not intimidating because now you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're like, okay, now get going. But the idea is that on certain days you're going to pick harder things to do because you just feel like a challenge. So, and that's usually the way it works out. But anyway, that really sped up my process for this particular book. So I'm going to adopt
my concern has always been Gaz is concerned about that method for myself because, like, I know myself, and I'm like, part of why I'll draw a background because I like drawing people. Like, that's my favorite thing to draw.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
to this day. So, like, the idea that I'm gonna like, start looking at orthogonal lines like for fun, it's just that doesn't sound like something I do.
I
seen
get the idea though.
Yeah, and I've seen it work stupendously with both Scots. So that's to me like kind of make interest in maybe trying it on the next one. You know,
My version of
I also
that-
worry. I'm a completist, and so I also worry about just not getting that hit from like a finished page that gets me to the next thing.
Right.
You know, because you're gonna have just a bunch of like semi-finished pages, but I see I do see the fruit of it. So I don't know.
I could definitely see how it could be advantageous. I worry, like I said, that I would not do it properly. I would do it in conjunction. The one like little trick I use myself, and I especially used it when I was getting back in the groove of things, is what I call pre-production, which is whatever I'm working on. I got the page, and it's like, okay, well, let me put the guide in there and make sure it's all, and let me do some rough lettering and like just balloons and okay, what just anything that isn't actually drawing but needs to be done. I'll sometimes start with that. And then I'm like, well, it's been 10 minutes, time to draw. But I'm, I tried to talk in chat to a couple people, but it's not letting me. But hello, chat, I see you. I can't respond for some reason.
It won't let you respond? What the
If I say hello, it says, this comment has failed to post to Joshua Kemble.
Oh, because anyone that comments it through StreamYard that's on the stream is going to show up as Joshua Kimball.
Oh, yeah. The way you'd have to do it, Gaz, would be to open up a tab with YouTube.
That's why I had the other tab open, which I closed when we started. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but you'd have to mute YouTube, and then you'd have to do it for YouTube. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to do all that, but I do see chat. Hello, everybody.
Hi. Also, who else do we got? Oh, Keeman just joined us. How's it going, Keeman?
Hey, Keeman.
Doing inspiring stuff. I find it really interesting, like that it's like it's something I've been thinking about recently. Maybe this can kind of tie in. Is I've started recording music like a lot, like recently, and one of the things that's bizarre to me is like now it's something I look forward to. I like to kind of carve a little bit each day. Yeah. But I wonder myself a year ago where for some reason I just was like avoiding the thing, like one of the things I love the most. And it's kind of the same comics where it's like when you are in that flow and that groove and you're starting to do it daily, it really does become like one of your favorite things to get to in the day. At least for me, it's like it's like a touchstone that you can kind of
keeps me focused.
No, yeah, it feels like home or something, you know.
It also, if you feel imposter syndrome, which a lot of us do, I know I do. I don't like to call myself a comic book artist, even though I've done full comics and been paid for it, and I do my own.
Yeah.
But like, if I once in a while work on a couple panels of my comic in between doing all this other art, I don't feel like a comic artist. But if I spend an hour or two a day, several days a week, I feel like, oh, I am a comic artist. I am working on comics. It's not like, oh, it's been 3 months. What do I do again? Let me shake off that rust. It just keeps your toe in that pool. And it makes me think of years ago, I did a comic strip, like a 3-panel gag strip or thereabouts in a local paper. It was never great. But in the beginning, it was so hard. Like I did like 10 strips to start. And then when I got to 11, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? But after doing it for a while, I'd walk around just thinking of jokes. I'm not saying they were great, but I'd always have a joke ready because I just got in the mindset of like, I need a new joke every day. And I feel like it's a similar thing to this.
Yeah, I definitely have experienced that too. Like the years that I was a t-shirt artist, like at first it was like a nightmare to come up with good concepts and stuff. And then you get in this flow where you're putting them out all the time and like the concepts just start coming,
Yeah.
It's that kind of showing up and then it happens. But it's interesting to me. I always wonder what it is in us that like that wants to deprive. I don't know that like people innately kind of want to deprive themselves of things they actually love.
Because there's easier ways to be happy. Playing a video game, watching Netflix is easier. It's easier.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, it's just it's like harder in the long run though. Like I don't know.
No,
yeah,
it's less satisfying on a base like level, like for your personhood and for your life, it's less satisfying that you watch that TV show or whatever. But in the moment, do I spend an hour watching a cool TV show and relaxing? That's fun. Or do I struggle with the perspective on a panel of a comic that won't be out for 3 years? You know what I mean? Like, so it's a bad short. It's like eating your vegetables. It's a bad short-term happiness, but it's a good long-term happiness.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Oh, I definitely would want to make sure we're not waxing over this in the chat. I guess Dylan said his dad died last Wednesday, and this is helping him relax. I'm sorry to hear that, Dylan. I've lost a father. I know a lot of us have lost people close to us. That is a raw one, and I'm glad we're able to kind of provide you with something
that takes your mind off it for a minute.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, so I feel like Horror A4. Okay, so like you did start getting back into this vibe. Gaz, one of the things I like about you, that I feel like this is the thing that kind of the glue that holds the Artcasters communities together, like just kind of our little bubble of people. And I noticed this, like, even going to WonderCon, right? Like when I did the panel at WonderCon, I was surrounded by friends of mine in a similar bubble of like one common thread, and everything else is pretty wildly different, right?
Right.
And it's the idea of like finishing something, like Gaz, I have no doubt in my mind, like even when you were talking about abandoning the Horror A4.
Yeah, that was the part that made me nervous back when he was like, I don't know if I might just stop doing this. And you have every right to.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man.
Well, I'll tell you.
But having watched you for years, like I known you for, like, I guess we've all known each other for a really long time. But it's like having known you for that long, it just didn't seem like something that if I was a betting man, I would have put odds against quitting it, because you're just like, you're a person who likes to kind of like, even if it takes 10 years.
You're right,
you know,
and you were right in the long run. I think the reason I was saying that when I was I was feeling demoralized, and it was just taking so long, and I think it was because I'm like someone who likes to finish things. There was two things going on, it pushed more to me what I was thinking at the time, because I didn't ever want to not finish. One was like convincing myself I should, like, I didn't want to quit, but try, like, maybe I should quit. Maybe if I can't get it done, at what point do I give up? I don't want to be the guy trying to be a rock star at 50 in his mom's basement. At some point I gotta stop, like trying to just convince myself that it made more sense to quit, even though I didn't really believe it. And the other part was, because I like to finish things, not finishing this was keeping me from finishing other things. And like, well, if I just give up on this, then I could finish other projects, and but you were right. At the end of the day, I came back to it, and now that 3's done, I'm like, I'm going to have 4 done in 6 months, which is not going to happen. But I'm excited to work on 4, as opposed to 3 felt like a burden at some point,
Yeah, and I think that's why it's good to like hit those milestones too, because you hit the milestones and then you get the people to kind of keep going through, like, it's like in a marathon where you're like, okay, I like got past this street, like now I know where I am, or whatever. Yeah. Like, it's less intimidating once you can see a little bit of progress, because this thing can feel like walking backwards on a conveyor belt sometimes. I feel like that's a lot of the process of doing this,
I have to remind myself that. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know that now that I've wrapped up this, and previously I was saying, once I wrap up this comic, it's probably going to be a long time before I do another comic, because it's just so involved. Yeah. But now that I've wrapped it up and I've already got this idea for the next one, I just want to like jump into it.
Of course.
But I really want to do it smart. Like, okay, I really want to do whatever I can to really build an audience around this while I'm making it, so it actually is success. So I can actually say, yeah, I'm making a living just from this comic,
Right.
So, which there's a lot involved in doing that, but there's certain people who've done stuff like that. Like, I'm going to look at a lot of cartoonist kayfabe and how they marketed their stuff. So, but yeah. So anyway, yeah.
I've had a lot of thoughts of that too, where I've talked about, and I'm not at the end like you are, but I'm at a milestone here where I've officially passed the midway point, because like 3 issues done, I only got 2 left.
Yes.
But I've said, like, I don't know if I'll do another comic ever again or not for a while, but I already think if I was done today, I know what my next comic would be already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to think of that, because that's, who knows when that's gonna happen. But to Scott's point, if and when I do my next project, like this one is locked into the way it is and it has to fit and whatever. I would either just release it as a finished book and not as floppies, or I would make the floppies more self-contained. Because I think the biggest thing, the thing that hurt me, it's not that it took a few years for each one to come out. It's that it's part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if it was just like an adventure that ended, and then a few years later, here's another adventure, and that would be fine. And I've seen people do that where they have books come out, very rarely, but it's fine. But everyone, the few people that like my book, and I appreciate sounds like I'm complaining, but I'm not. Everyone that likes my book is like, when's the next part? Because they want to know the rest of the story, which is a great feeling, but it's also a horrible feeling when it's like, I know it's been years, like.
No, that's actually a really good point. Like I thought about that one because Gary like sets up DV versus DVSM or whatever. I think is kind of akin to what you're saying, where it's like each issue is kind of self-contained, and there's like a little bit of a broader story.
What book is this? I didn't hear.
Oh, a Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots.
Gotcha. Oh, you got the TMNT going for it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry. I probably just anytime I say DVSM, I always think it's going to sound like BDSM. But anyhow,
now that you said it, I get it exactly. But I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, but so Gary kind of sets that up that way, where it's like a self-contained story, and then they're all kind of disparate stories that are going to connect. There's through lens. Right. I think that might be. I agree with that because, like, I think in big stories and not so much serialization. Yeah. So I had the same thought when it was coming to 2 stories, which I initially was going to put out as like trades, or not as floppies, and then I realized like it wouldn't be. I mean, it's still like split into 2 stories. That one that'll continue. But I do think it would have been more successful, like it as a floppy. If I was gonna do floppies, I would have to do like self-contained stories.
Yeah.
Just because of my pace, because I feel like when you have the cliffhanger endings, it's a format that's like for serialization, So it's, but I don't know.
You can do that on a page turn too,
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
And if you're clever enough, you could have it be a self-contained story with plot lines that will connect if you follow it to the end, but
exactly.
I've also had the thought
like the fringe, like what is it? Oh my gosh, I was gonna say
Fringe?
The Wire. Sorry, The Wire. The Wire, where like season 1, season 2, and season 3 are totally different, kind of, but they're not. But they're self-contained, but they connect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've also had the thought of, let's say I'm done today with all 5 issues. I might go into some other comic story, or I could then do individual issues of like, let's make a book about that character. Just their story, 1 issue done. Or, things like that where, okay, it came out, 3 years after issue 5, but it doesn't matter because it's just a little side story. And, maybe I do another book and then 10 years later, I'm like, by the way, here's another horror book that, just is its own standalone thing. Or, I've had that thought.
I do love that. Yeah, like almost playing with the world you built, but like in smaller chunks. That's great. It's a bizarre thing. Like the persistence and perseverance like required in comics are like kind of insane, but it's also fun to see that. Like to me, that's kind of a common thread of like now that at least are in our circle. Is like It's a strange group of people that are all like strangely. I don't know if we all suffer from like massive sunk cost fallacies.
I mean, for sure, because I don't think anybody I know in this group or out of it, the most successful comic artists I personally know still have day jobs. You know what I mean? Like they're successful. People like their art. They've made some money, but nobody's. It's not like everybody's Robert Kirkman or something like. You know what I mean? Like. It's
I remember feeling I remember kind of finding out like how people like kind of made their livings, like who were like full-time cartoonists, and some of those people, they'd just be like, well, I have just like a really rich husband or wife or thing, and well that's the
yes. I remember learning that. I also remember learning that people maybe even had other art jobs. But they're like, well, my main job is I'm a storyboard artist for this movie studio, and then I do comics, things like that. I remember years ago, I want to say this was like late 90s, early 2000s, after the big image boom, but comics were still.
Yeah.
And I forget if it was Adam or Andy Kubert was talking about, and they're big name, especially at that time, doing Wolverine and all that stuff. And they were saying they did an ad for like Universal Studios, like the Hulk ride or something like that. And they were like, I got paid more for that Hulk drawing that I did for like the last 2 issues, because it was a spot illustration from Universal Studios. And I'm like, oh, that's wild. Like, it's almost like comic books are the commercial for the stuff that actually pays money. Like, and I feel like that's true even today. People that don't even necessarily work anymore that had a popular comic back in the day are making more money doing commissions and signing comics now than they did when they were doing the comics. It's wild.
Yeah. The page rates.
I mean, when the comic, in the 90s after the implosion, most of those image guys that were making so much money, I mean, that not the founders, but everyone they hired on went into like video games and stuff like that.
Yeah. It is wild though to think about the image money, like because that was like a very strange era in time where you had McFarlane buying sports teams and Spawn mobiles and like just a really strange.
I was a teenager when that was happening, so to me, I'm like,
me
this
too.
Is the future. This is what'll happen. If I just draw enough
the
veins on the arm,
whole thing.
Yeah,
that's wild. So okay, Horror A4. You've built up this thing again. Now you have juice to kind of keep going. That is kind of interesting. What you guys were mentioning about the break after comics. I've told myself that after 2 graphic novels, each time I'm like, I'm done with comics for like a year, and then the second I finish page 1 or the last page, I'm suddenly back to some other crazy project, comic project, because I just love this stuff.
We'll have to see what Scott does because he's actually at that finishing line. So we'll see if in 3 months he started a new comic or not. But
he will. I know he's already starting it, so
I've already mentioned what it is and all that. I've done sketches but I was doing a lot we did a retreat like close to a year ago. We got another one coming up in August. And I did a lot of preliminary drawings and stuff, and I had so much fun with that. And I haven't worked on it since, other than just if I get an idea, I jot it down or whatever. That kind of thing.
Well, I will say that's good, though, because one of the things I wish I had done, which I would do if I did another comic other than a spinoff of the horror, is a lot more. I did a lot of writing and world building that way, but I didn't do a lot of drawing. I kind of drew each character one time. And that was a huge mistake because I did a lot of learning on the page of like, what does this building look like? Who do these characters look like? And I definitely would have like filled the sketchbook with that's what I will do next time. I'll fill a sketchbook with characters and references for the type of things I'm going to do. And I'll also base things more on reality because my comic is sort of in a semi-futuristic, semi-sci-fi world. And I did the worst thing you could do. And again, I'm locked into this aesthetic now, so I can't change it. But I didn't just go, I'm going to make up whatever. And I didn't base it on real life. I sort of made it has to be just realistic enough that it kind of looks real, but I didn't use like real tables and real phones and real cars that like if I was making a movie, I would take a real car and put stuff on it and change it around to be a space car. Yeah. And if I was doing animation, I would just draw whatever I wanted. And I don't know what I did, but I made it the hardest way I could do it is all I could say. It's like that. Yeah. It's hard for me to find reference for what I want, but I can't just make up anything because it doesn't match the rest of the aesthetic. So I would not, I'll just say this. If I do the next story I'm thinking about, I've struggled I don't even want to talk about it, but there's going to be a lot of trees and there's going to be a lot of snow if I do that book. So I would study trees and snow.
Yetis.
And things like, it's not Yetis, but I would just do a lot of studies of that in reality. And then even if I change it to suit my story, I'd have a good basis of that. And it wouldn't be just making it up whole cloth like I've been doing with the Horror A4.
Yeah, it is a... you saying that does make me, like, I'm thinking visually of it, and you're right, that style's kind of like right in between going like somewhat, photo-based or going just full cartooning. You did the like hard in between, which is really hard. Yeah.
And my characters have always been a little bit like that, and I don't mind that for my characters, but for the props and the backgrounds and everything else, it's
Yeah, so almost like it is funny when you do things like that. Like to me, like I would look at that and then be like, oh, the manga artists were onto something. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
they're using a very real like you look at Akira, it's like futuristic, but it's very real backgrounds. You know,
Right. And Akira
with,
is
you know,
a huge
cartoon
influence.
characters.
Akira is
Yeah.
a huge influence on my book, and so
Yeah.
I didn't learn the lessons well enough from like you know what I mean. Like a lot of the grayscale and the writing, but not so much the shortcuts and the stylistic choices they made, which would have probably helped me.
Which I like. A lot of people would look at Akira and be like, "Oh, that's crazy," but it's like there's a logic to the way they kind of set that up.
I'm not saying it's easy, but it is that thing of like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm reinventing the wheel every couple pages instead of just knowing what I'm doing, even if it's hard, you know?
Yeah, and the sad thing is, and this is the thing, it is like kind of a lot of people will always compare making comics to like birth, you know, not that it's actually birth, but kind of bringing something into the world, and I think it is like in a weird way like a little similar to parenting in the sense that by the time you get your routine down and dude got diaper changing down,
Right.
I'm like, I'm a master at this. They move on to another stage and you're like, but I just like rocked the swaddling cloth. Like I know that like the back of my hand. It's like a skill that I've acquired and now I'm never going to use again. Like it's
that makes,
it feels like that with comics, right? Where like by the time you're done with your story, you'll have that style and that method so locked in, and then you got to start a new thing. Yeah,
I was gonna push back a little bit, but now that you've finished your thought, I agree. And also, I think it's a thing too where like with a child, they're getting better and more advanced and more complex. And hopefully, theoretically, as a writer and or artist, so were you. So it's not so much that like, oh, what a waste, but it's more like you don't lose those skills, but the next time you work on a book, you're starting from a higher point, which is good.
Yes.
You're no longer satisfied with what you did. So it's not like, great, now I can do this. You're like, well, no, but now I'm trying to do that. And if you're a good artist, that's how it should always be. Unfortunately, like it's weird because I do know people that are not necessarily the best artists that are super happy and they're not trying to be better. And they have fun drawing and they like it. And I'm like, man, I mean, good for you. Like not in a condescending way, but like good for you because I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to just be happy and draw and whatever, as soon as I learn how to, I have trouble drawing hands. And I was thinking about this the other day, like a lot of people have trouble drawing hands, but I've tried to fix it and study it. And I was drawing some hands on issue 3 and thinking, these are terrible. But then I'm like, these are way better than the ones I was doing on issue 1. I've definitely gotten better. But if I drew this a couple of years ago, I'd be like, wow, these are the best hands I ever drew. But now I'm like, I got to do better than this. You know what I mean? So it's like it's always got to be better than what you are now. Otherwise,
Yeah, that's a good point. And that ties into the persistence and perseverance thing because after doing stuff, the perseverance part is like you got to realize like you're the guy seeing yourself in the mirror every day, right? You don't see the changes. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but like you know how you have like a close friend or something that you see every day? Yeah. And you won't even notice how much they've changed in a year, like visually. Whereas somebody who hasn't seen them in a year will like see them and be like, "Oh my gosh, you put on weight," or "Oh my gosh, you look great." They'll notice the differences more than you because you're with it every day. And it's the same thing. It's like with comics, you're not going to notice those little incremental improvements you're doing in art. This year I've been reminded of stuff I've gained because I'm teaching art again, and like when you're teaching, you're like, oh yeah, I can like do a lot of stuff. Like you kind of forget, like like I know how to use gouache, I know how to use oil paint, I know how to use all this stuff. I know how like whether you work light to dark and like what to mix and all this stuff that I haven't used in years, but it's like stuff I've acquired, and then you're reminded of it. But yeah, that is the hard part with comics is like you won't really see how much you're growing as an artist doing a comic until you're done with the comic and you start your next comic and you see how much you leveled up. Like,
and that's specific to comics as well because it's such a wide spectrum art form. If you're like a car designer, you could look back at a year and be like, wow, I'm such a better car designer than I was because that's all you're working on.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing comics, maybe your drawing cars goes up 1% and your perspective goes up 2% and your anatomy goes up 1% and your story, like they all are increasing a little bit, but over a wide range.
Yeah.
So it definitely isn't as noticeable, but it does transfer because I've worked on comics and done a bunch of stuff and then go back to draw something I don't know, like a house or something, just like as an illustration that I have, and I haven't drawn like a regular old house in like 3 years, but because I've been working on comics and kind of touching everything, my line quality is a little better, and I understand like that house. Yeah, maybe it's not as good as if I was drawing houses for 3 years, but it is better than what I drew 3 years ago, just because I've been drawing a little bit of everything in comics.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and then also building that daily habit is going to get you, like, I do believe, like, you know, all the teachers and stuff that were, like, harping on, you know, drawing your sketchbook every day, I think these people were onto something, because I do think the nice thing about working on a comic and kind of spending daily time with it is you are making art every single day, and that will inevitably make you better. And what's fun is, then we'll make it harder for ourselves and be like, I'm going to do my next issue in a completely different style, or a completely different, like you were, like I have this world. It's a nightmare to work in this style. I'm going to work in a totally different style. And then it's like, we're just going to create another nightmare.
Yeah. But we convince ourselves this will be easier. This will make sense. I'll do it this way.
Yeah.
In the chat. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I say the chat is people talking about the implosion of the 90s and the bubble and people Pokemon cards and just all the people that buy things thinking they're going to put themselves through college with the death of Superman and foil comics and
there was like I think it was somebody was talking about the implosion of Image, and as far as I can understand, it was the speculative market that got heavy into.
My recollection was that it was all comics. I mean, Image got hurt.
Yeah. And a lot of it was like kicked off by like wild successes of indie comics, you know, in the early 90s. Like, so you had these weird, just like, you know, dark horse stories like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where suddenly, like, dude, you have this like indie comic that's worth like you could buy a house with, you know, like.
I think it was a combination of those lottery winners and like I remember seeing it build where like Spider-Man #1 was the greatest selling comic of all time, and then it was X-Men, and then it was Spawn, and then it was and it kept building. But the perception was that like there's more comic fans than ever, and there were more then than there are now for sure. But it wasn't that. It was that people were buying 2 or 3 copies, or they had multiple variants. So one person would buy 3 to get all 3 copies, but then they buy 3 to put away. And then it built because then someone who doesn't collect comics was like, oh, I'll buy these because they're going to be worth something. So then you're selling 1 million copies of the comic to like, I don't know, 200,000 people. I'm making up numbers, but like there'd be more copies of comic than there were fans of it. And so it's never
like the bagged death of Superman, you know, that's like the most common comic for somebody my age to own. Is like bagged death of Superman, you know.
I think between those two things, it really, at some point, the speculators and investors realized it wasn't worth anything, and so they stopped buying, and all of a sudden the comic companies were making 1 million copies, were like not selling them and taking huge losses, and that's when Marvel went bankrupt. I don't know if you remember that, but like that's why Sony and all them, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's why Sony got X-Men and Spider-Man, because they were just trying to take it. We need money, you know, like, and if it wasn't for
Dark Horse went bankrupt around that time too. There's like 3 companies that folded. Malibu was one of the big ones that just
wasn't Malibu bought by Marvel and then destroyed, is how I remember it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like they bought them just
but
to
it's
get
like,
rid of them.
Yeah, but it's bizarre that it's bizarre that era existed, but it kind of makes sense. It was like it's unfortunately the Beanie Baby craze kind of happened with comics, but also there's also just the poor writing boom that happened with that as well, where they kind of lost touch with a lot of the things that made comics great because of some of the new cool things that the Image guys were doing, where they're like, dude, we're going to print this on nice paper. Like, that was a big deal. The interior paper being really good.
Yeah. The color, computer coloring was like brand new at that time.
Yeah, using just like all kinds of techniques that have been around in like book publishing for years, but not in comic book publishing, where you'd have like, you know, foil covers and like, you know, all the like, holographic covers and all this really cool stuff. But when they started getting lost in the glitz, you'd often read these books and it was like, you know, 20, you know, one-page spread pictures, you know, of like really buff, cool people with guns and no like real plot, you know.
You're right that a lot of them were just poor quality, but even forgetting about the quality, because there are all these #1s were coming out, and those were the ones that were thought to be expensive. There were stories that I believe are true of people putting out a #1 and becoming millionaires because they owned all the rights to it, and then maybe they never made number 2, or maybe number 2 took 6
Yep.
months, and then so it was this thing where like there was an incentive to make number 1s, and then no incentive to kind of keep going, and so it was this weird thing where like, and it's weird to think of now because I'd like to think if I put out a number 1 issue of a new comic and I became a millionaire, I'd like to think I'd be like, wow, that's amazing, I can't wait to work on issue 2. But that's not what was happening then. And I'm not faulting them because I wasn't in that position. But there were definitely artists that couldn't get it together to do a 2nd or 3rd issue when they were making all this money.
Oh, yeah. I still remember Wetworks, okay? Anyhow.
I was thinking of Tribe, actually.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
because Tribe, I think, only had 1 issue, maybe 2. Wetworks?
What's that? It's circular gold cover.
3, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting era.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, just that. And somebody was saying about Pokemon. Is it happening with Pokemon cards now? Probably, but it's also happened to Pokemon cards in the past. Because remember, they're from the 90s as well. So Pokemon cards, Magic cards, all that stuff, it's a little bit cyclical. If it manages to survive and rebuild itself, I feel like it's only a matter of time. And if they have any value, at some point it's going to happen again to a greater or lesser degree.
Yeah, and I think the fact that these are things that people actually use in games, like a lot of Pokemon collectors play Pokemon, you know, like it's as long as people are still playing the game, I think there's still some inherent value in it. Right. But it's like, you know, back in the game gets boring and people are just buying the cards is like, I think when you know you're gonna know like you're probably gonna have like a bust, you know. That's wild. Sorry, that was a total derail. I just got interested.
I know, but that's what people were talking about in chat, so I figured we should comment on it.
I think Gaz and I are similar age, so I do remember, like, in my teens, like, you know, there were image signings where they'd, like, pull up in limos. Like, it was just weird.
Yeah, I never went to one, but I remember seeing pictures. Like, I remember reading Wizard magazine and seeing, like, lines around the block at the local comic store. Like, whoa!
Yeah. There were a couple, I have, like, a couple comics that I got signed by, like, all the Image crew. Who came down in the Antelope Valley.
I definitely didn't get any back in the day. I actually had I think it was a random Spider-Man comic signed by Todd McFarlane, but it was like somebody had gotten it for me from a comic store, so it wasn't like I met him or anything, you know? Like,
yeah. Here's the sad part. Almost all the ones that got signed by the Image guys at a particular event when I was like, I think like 14 or 13 or something, I didn't know about like letting ink dry on the signatures, and so I slipped them in, and so it has that. Every person my age range will remember the paint pens didn't dry, and so it just has like a silver and gold smudge on the poly bag. Yeah,
I had an experience like that recently. I do a lot of Power Rangers conventions because I sell Power Rangers prints and art and things like that. That's one of my things I do that isn't comics. And I had a Rita Repulsa from Mighty Morphin. The actress Carla Perez was there. She was the second season. Doesn't matter. She was there. And I was going to give you the whole history. And I had a piece of art. Somebody bought my art, had her sign it, then came back to show me for some reason or another. And they had a disability, a physical disability. And they were having trouble getting it in the bag and board or whatever. And I was like, do you want me to help you with that? And they're like, oh, sure, thanks. But it wasn't
you that did it.
That's awful.
It wasn't a little bit ruined. It was complete. It was just a smear of blue. And I was like, oh. And so I said, okay, hold on. Luckily I had another print. I'm like, I'm going to walk with you back to her table. If I have to pay for it, I will. But luckily we got back there and they were a little bit nervous. The person I kind of was their spokesperson. You know, I'm like, look, they bought this from me. They bought it from you. I wrecked it. Could we get another? If I have to pay, and she's like, and she was cool and she fixed it. And I would have paid if I had to. But it was the worst moment because I'm like, what if she left? What if I don't have another one? This was like their big moment and I just ruined it. You know, like it was so terrible when I just saw it go and I was like,
the feeling the second you see it. Oh, that's horrible. That's worse if it's someone else, you know.
Yes.
Oh man. Okay. So what do you think? What do you think is the thing that keeps people? What is the thing that drives you to be persistent and persevere the art making process? Like, what do you think it is? Because I've thought about this too. Like, what are the qualities that make somebody do that? Like,
I mean, I think it's different for everybody, but there's probably a mix of common ingredients that different people have in different amounts.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of imposter syndrome. Like, if I'm not doing this, then I'm not a real artist, or I'm not, like, what good am I as, like, my identity as an artist. And if I'm not doing this, am I even really an artist? So there's a part of that. There's a part of the needing to complete things. Otherwise, I just gave up and I'm a failure and blah, 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 blah. There's a part of, like, I have a story that I want to tell. I don't know if people are going to like it. I don't know how well it'll do, but it's like, I haven't seen this story. So it's like, I think it's worth putting out into the world, for whatever that's worth. And on a really base level, it's like, I grew up watching cartoons, reading comics, playing video games, whatever. And I always was like, I didn't even articulate it exactly. Maybe I was going to be an actor. Maybe I was going to do, but I always knew, like, I want to create a thing like the things I like. And so there's probably other factors in there too, but like bits of those things together, sort of insecurity, wanting to validate myself as an artist, wanting to put something out into the world, wanting to emulate my entertainers, all together. Yeah, I don't know. That's the best answer I could give you. But there's also just like some sort of insanity as well. Like,
Yeah. It's an interesting cocktail I think everybody's got, but I like the way you verbalize that, because I think that's you hit on it 1 or 2 points that I definitely have myself, and it's a wild thing, like but I think that, like, one of the things that's really hard to it's hard to motivate someone to want it enough to do it. Like with anything, I think, and so I always wonder, I know I'm like, at this point in my life, I know I'm slightly autistic, and I'm starting to think that might be a superpower when it comes to comics. Like, with just like, for some reason, I will not quit a comic. Like, I'm not quitting you, comic. What's up?
I say that about ADHD, that it's kind of like a superpower.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm sure there's neurodivergence with a lot of us doing this stuff. But there's something to it, Scott, what about you? Like, what's the thing that you just finished the mile, not mile, like a million miles. What do you think? What do you think the thing is that drove you to not just go, what's this, like, what got you to pay the last page of The Young and the Dead?
I think part of it is, I think it's the way I'm wired, but I don't want to say that but I don't want to say that like that's something that I was just born with, because I'll always give the advice that if you want to do a comic, just start small. Once you get that taste of getting something finished, no matter how small, then you just gradually crank it up a bit the next
100% agree.
Time. Yeah. And you can train yourself. Just like when I started, like most people, when I started as an artist, we're talking about the 90s, I thought, I'm just going to go to the comic convention. I'm going to show them my stuff, and they're going to like hire me on the spot. Then they're just going to pay me. And back then people could be millionaires or whatever. Like, I'm going to be, and then it was a kind of hard lesson to learn that wasn't really the case.
Yeah, Stanley's going to knock on the door and go, "You got the stuff, kid."
I thought my stuff's going to, people are just going to come to me. And I never thought that I was going to have to learn how to be a business person and learn how to market myself and learn to do all that. But I did, and I'm still doing it. I'm still trying to get better at it. And because of that, I've been able to make a living doing my art, and that's amazing. But I mean, but I had to learn all this stuff that I was not expecting to learn. And somewhere along the line, I started to kind of like figuring out how to do the marketing, started to like how to do some of this other stuff, like being an entrepreneur, like all that stuff. And, not as much as I would if I had my druthers, it'd still be the way I originally thought, where people just come to me and I do it. But that's not reality. So I think you can train yourself to be, just be someone who finishes stuff, but you got to start small. That's the biggest thing. So many people are just struggling just to even begin their comic, because whether, it's not going to be good enough or whatever. Yeah. Maybe it's not, but you could have something that's
It won't be.
First
The
comic,
first couple things you do are not going to be good, and if you realize that, it takes a lot of the pressure off.
And don't,
Yeah.
if you got something you really think is going to be the best thing that you really want to tell, maybe you're not ready for that particular story.
Yeah.
Take a bit of it, and just start with that, and then get to the point where you do your thing. But I mean, so yeah, it's something I think you can learn, but I had to kind of wire myself that way, and so I do it. And now I can't
want to touch on something you said too, which I think a lot of us had, the idea that you'd go to a comic convention, they'd look at your art and give you a job, and now you're drawing Spider-Man or whatever. And I definitely had that, and I definitely had a delusion that I still a little bit have. It's like hard to break, of like, well, I don't know if like realistically, I probably would not do a good job drawing Spider-Man. Like if I just suddenly had to draw an issue of Spider-Man, like all those cities and the specific anatomy, and like there's a lot of stuff in there that I'd have to really brush up on if I found out I got that job. But in my head, if I got it, I would start for the next month. I'd practice, and then I'd be doing it every day, and I'd be good at Spider-Man. And that was the thought of, if they offered me the job, then I'd be good at it. But like, it's sort of that dress for the job you want. If you want to be a comic artist, start making comics. If you want to be an actor, start acting in local theater, start doing films. Like, just start doing it. Don't wait for somebody to give you that job. Do it, A, so now you could say you're that thing because you're doing it. And B, if that opportunity shows up, what luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So if somebody came up to me and wanted me to do a Ninja Turtle comic, I actually feel like I could probably do it now. But only because I've been doing comics and art all this time. Whereas if I had done like one Ninja Turtle page 3 years ago, like, trust me, I can do it. It's like, can you? So just doing it.
That's a good point. Like, in a weird way. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you want to break into the comic business, I think nowadays the best chance you have of that is doing your own thing and having something and showing that you can do it, because you're not going to go to a comic convention and there's not going to be Marvel and DC editors like there was back in the 90s.
We did have a question
where you can go to their website and see a submission that they're not really open to submission. You gotta find other ways, and the best way to do that, I think, is making your own thing and having something like, I can deliver, I can create my own thing, and then using that as an entry point.
Yeah.
Somebody was asking about, I think this is what you were asking about, thinking it was a Black Manta helmet. This is a Power Rangers Jungle Fury red helmet. It's actually a kid's toy, but it's a really, really good one.
Oh, wow.
I think
that's a really nice toy.
I thought that was
Dude, I'm so jealous of kids. Kids these days, they have the coolest.
This is from like 2000. This isn't a current one, but like, it fits on my head. I got it at a yard sale or something for super cheap, but at a distance, it looks like the one that were on the show. Is that what you were talking about in chat, though? I assume that it was.
Yeah, I believe that was. I think that's what Dylan was asking.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, like I kind of think it's like one of those things too, where if I go back in time, because I was similar as a kid, I almost feel like I'd want to tell that kid, like, be careful what you wish for, like, because if you got the thing that you're running right now, you would be dead. Like, you would not survive that marathon. And that's one of the things I always, keep in mind with Rob Liefeld, who get a lot of grief. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, when I was 17, if I had gotten signed to like Marvel Comics, I don't think my comics would have been, held a candle to what he was doing. So I feel like that style, to an extent, like, it's pretty good for the age he was at, like, at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember liking it at some point before I saw the flaws stuff. But when it comes to Rob Liefeld, like, I don't mind anybody being like, I don't really like his art. But there are people that, like,
100%.
And like, maybe he said some jerky things, I don't know, but I'm not even talking about that. They're just like, because he was a bad artist at 19 and made millions of dollars, I hate him. I'm like, really? Like, you would have loved to be a bad artist making millions of dollars. Like, why? He got lucky. He drew, he got lucky. Like, good for him, you know? Like,
and again, like, he was a way better cartoonist at that age than I was at that age. Like, I'm not saying he now is a great cartoonist, but I'm just saying, like, it's made me less. I was one of the guys who used to judge Liefeld, and then I had that realization, and it was like a. But another thing is, like, back in the day, it wasn't all that different in the sense of starting in indies. Like, I was a huge Max head, fan of the Max. Like, Sam Keith was like my favorite. If you look in old issues of the Max, I have like little things in the back section, like the little letters, like Max head section. I had a pen pal who's a really close friend of mine now for like years from the Max.
That's amazing.
But Sam Keith like started in indies with like Fantagraphic stuff, and then like Marvel picked him up, so it's like, and he started doing like odd covers here or there, and people would just buy those more because Sam Keith's style is so cool. But but it's like I wasn't looking at that as a kid. I was looking at the big thing and thinking that's kind of how they started. So I do think it is one of those things of like, just you gotta just kind of start doing it, and if it sucks, just embrace the process, because welcome to the club. Like all of our, like Gaz was saying, all our first things suck.
And Erzuki said something, says, I don't think I would do well being a creator. The criticism could be soul crushing. People have forgotten how to enjoy things, just move on. There's truth to that. And again, I have difficulty answering questions about a comic artist or artist because I'm me, and I'm not, I don't, we're all different.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying if somebody tells me my art is bad, it doesn't hurt my feelings a little bit, but not much, because I see every flaw in everything I draw. I know how bad it is. I know it's bad. You don't need to tell me. It's never a shock. But that aside, my experience has been overwhelmingly positive. Occasionally somebody won't like. I've never had somebody say you suck. What I've had people say is like, show me another artist that's better, or like, oh, I like what you have, but have you seen this? Which is a little bit, weird to do, and a little bit hurtful. But like, the worst thing people have done is show me other art that is similar to mine that they think is better in some way. But like, overwhelmingly, I've gotten positive reinforcement to the point where I'm like, I've fooled you all. You all think I'm better than I am. So like, I'm never worried about somebody saying they don't like it. Even with my comic, what I always say is, if you don't like the story and if you don't like the art, that's fine. If you don't like both, that's fine. My goal was to create a book that looks like a professional did it from beginning to end and created it. It's a real comic. That's my goal. If you like it, even better.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it's part of growing as an artist is going to be getting criticism. Like, everybody is doing art for some reason, got past that stage where, like, we're all taught how to draw symbolically. Like, a star is this, and like a house is a triangle on top of a square. Like, you learn these symbols, and like, a little swirly bop is a cloud. Like, and that's how most people draw, because they're trained to do it from like, kindergarten. Like, that's not how you draw a person. This is, and they draw a stick figure, and then you program that. And then when you try to get out of that and like actually start representing things, there's like a natural frustration that most people kind of give up. Like at that point, where like, oh, I want to draw like an actual eye of a person that looks like an eye. And then there's this weird group of people that will, no matter how many people are looking at their stuff and going, "That's a crappy drawing of an eyeball," like they just keep going until they start getting people going like, "Whoa, how'd you draw that?"
Right.
Yeah, so I think art is presenting and getting feedback, but I do hate people who are like overly critical of other people's
negative
art
for the sake of negativity. Kind of like we were saying about Rob Liefeld. It's like, well, can you do better? Why are you so angry? If you don't like it, just move on. Do in this day and age, I've talked to people about the idea of art school and like, is it even worth it because you could do so much online and blah blah. There's a lot of reasons pro and con for art school. For money, or do you have the discipline to study on your own? What about the contacts you make? But I think one of the things, if you don't go to some kind of art school, whether it's online, like a community college, something, if you don't go through the critique process numerous times, you're at a huge disadvantage. Not just because people will point out things that are wrong and help you be better, but you will not be able to handle somebody saying something negative, even if it's polite and correct. And I see that, again, I'm not a big famous guy, but I do a lot of conventions, and occasionally I get people that want me to look at their artwork. And I used to be very honest, not mean, but honest, where I'd be like, okay, this is nice, but you want to do comics and it's all pinups, or, oh, you don't really know how to draw muscles that well. You got to work on that, or just, like real critiques, polite. Nobody took it well, because these are people that didn't go to art school and just had their friends and family tell them they're great artists because they were artists. They did have some ability better than the randos that they knew in their life. And so I've kind of come to the conclusion that, like, I guess if you don't start getting critiques at some point that you can tolerate, you'll never be able to tolerate, and then you'll never grow. And even if you do get better, just that thin skin of like, oh, don't tell me it's not good. Like, it's like,
you also will become like a nightmare client, for clients, like basically because. Because like Gaz does professional art, Scott does professional art. I do it too, and it's like if the cover I'm working on for this client today, they sent like 2 revisions. They're really easy revisions, but it's like if I was the younger me who hadn't been through the fire of art school, I think that I would have been very defensive and I would have lost that client in a minute. When not being able to just step outside yourself and just see, aesthetically, like, or okay, their aim is this and this isn't quite hitting that mark. We'll change it to hit that mark.
Everything you said is true, and there's also a distinction, like, and not everyone makes these distinctions, but I definitely, ideally, I'm doing something where I'm getting paid and I'm enjoying the challenge of it and I like the subject matter. But more often than not, it's like there's art I enjoy and art I'm doing for the money. And not everyone's able to make those distinctions. And sometimes it starts off as art I think we're going to enjoy. Then I get the second or third revision where they want me to do things that I think will objectively make it worse. And I flip a switch and go, oh, you want the sky to be brown? Sure. Here you go. It's done. And you can send the check here. And I don't get upset. I don't get mad at how dumb they are. I'm like, they want the sky brown. They're going to give me $500. Brown sky. Thanks. Here's my $500. And I think some people just can't let it go because it's their art and they know better. And they might be right. But if you want to get paid, like, and is that selling out? I don't, I think if you're, one time, I've probably told this story before, but I forget the job I was doing. I was doing some job for somebody and I sent them a contract, which outlined, because we all build up our contracts just by getting burned basically most of the time. And it was like, I need a deposit by this date. And then I send you the low res. And then it was like, a couple paragraphs outlining the whole thing, how I do the illustration. And I was like, did you get it? And do you agree to it? And she said something like, yeah, I got it. It seems really mercenary though. I'm like, mercenary? And I'm like, I mean, you're paying me to make art. I mean, I guess I am a mercenary. Like, she meant it kind of as an insult. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm an art mercenary. No, you're right. I'm a hired gun. Like,
never say that to a freelancer thinking it's an insult. Like, we all view ourselves as like a hired gun. Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, I just wanted to be clear so there's no arguments later. And I think she just wanted, like, hey, let's create together. And it's like, that is not what's happening here. You're paying me to make something for you. That's fine. Yeah, if we're collaborating on something, then we got to start talking about IPs and like splitting royalties and I love that. I think that Erzuki, I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong, said, what an interesting thing art school teaches you resilience and how to give critiques too. Here's the thing I love about art school too. I think that the value of art school is much more than just faculty, because the 20-ish kids that ended up in the BFA program out of the 60 that applied in the program that I got into are still to this day my tightest network of professional artists. And not just that, they were the people that like I was competing with, like in a fun way. So it's kind of like doing your reps at a gym next to a rock star, who's like just like stacked, and you're like, crap, I gotta up my weight. Like you can't not do reps in the gym of art.
It encourages you to be a better artist, seeing what they're doing, but also there's a friendship because you've gone through the same stuff at the same time. And I'm sure all of us. Well, I'll speak for myself. I've definitely gotten jobs because I knew someone there. Not like in a well, it is a little bit nepotism, because if I didn't know them, it wasn't like I know you, so you get the job. But it was more like, hey, I'm going to tell you about a job that's available because I know you. And so
everything's that way.
Yeah, and it's not fair, but it's true that if people know you, if there's 2 people equally suited for the job and one of them went to school with you, who are you going to hire? That's just life, unfortunately.
I mean, here's the reality, just with like our stream right now. Like, if I was overloaded, right, and somebody had like a mech or or they needed a kaiju, right, I would instantly think of you guys. I'd just be like, I know the guy. Not that that's all you're pinned down to, but my point is like,
and not that there are other artists that could do it, but me, and
But I mean, of course, you're going to go to the people you know, because, like, I mean, it's just what comes to mind first, you know.
Yeah, sometimes. This wasn't a particular job, but I had a friend who was mentoring somebody. It was a big fan of Power Rangers, and they asked me if I could talk to him. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm the best person, but I know who is.
Tag.
And by the way, to give credit to Gaz too, I was at a this is gonna sound dark at first, but it's not. Don't worry. But I was at a funeral for a friend, and I'm at that age where only times we have like really collective meetups with like all the guys and like that are in our tight network are during funerals or weddings, right? And I had a friend who was talking to me about their favorite artist because they're a Power Ranger nerd. And they were talking about like some of their favorite artists that they bought prints from, and they're kind of describing it a bit. And I was like, "Are you talking about Gaz?" And they're like, well, "Yeah, Gazbot. You know him?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've known him for like years." Like it was like a funny moment of like, Michael Jackson, like like super big rock star or whatever. And it's like, anyhow, it was just a funny moment where I was like, "Yeah, Gaz, you have definitely carved like a corner." Where you're very well known and and very good at like that.
It's a small slice, that was cool. but I'll take it.
No, I mean it's everybody's got like a tiny little like slice we're working on.
I think part of it there has to be whatever the thing is, you have to like it. Like if Scott was doing his book and didn't actually like Goonies and Monster Squad, I'm just like, I think this will be marketable. It would not be nearly as endearing. And similarly, like if I hated Power Rangers, but I'm like, well, there's a Power Rangers convention. Like, but I've watched almost every episode of every season. My friend and I talk about it weekly. It's like, and I think that I might not be the best Power Ranger artist, but I'm clearly a fan. Like it helps.
Well, and I think that's like because like and maybe this will go into like persistence and perseverance too. But it's like I think if you're when it comes to like especially personal projects, even if it is like posters, whatever it is, right? There is something that's hard to pin down. That and I don't want to say authenticity, but I want to say like we've all had teachers like that hated their subject, right? Yeah. And they're the worst teachers, even if they do everything on paper right, and you can tell they don't like reading, and they're teaching literature. Like, this is really weird. The difference between that and a teacher that's like maybe not even as like on paper, like they're crossing their T's, dotting their I's as much, but you can tell like they love books. Like that love of things makes it more engaging to be in a class with somebody like that. The love of the thing makes it more engaging to look at the art, I think, because you're inevitably going to do things that like you gotta love it to do that thing,
And funny, going back to persistence and perseverance and all that, like the prints I sell at shows and online and stuff, there's a little diversity, but it's mostly Godzilla and Power Rangers. That's like mostly what I do, and that's been narrowed down over time by doing things I like and seeing what sells. And those are the things that I both like and sell well. And where's it going? Oh, persistence. I have several 11x17 Power Rangers prints, but I also have a lot of headshots of individual Rangers and villains. And one of my goals, kind of like with the comic where it's like, is to do a headshot of every single Power Ranger there's ever been, which I didn't know was my goal at first, but became it at some point. And so at this point, I've done every Ranger from Mighty Morphin till the end of In Space. And then from there, I have a smattering of every season, but like if I live long enough, I'll eventually do them all. And that's stupid. And I shouldn't, but that's what I'm doing.
Are there?
I don't know, hundreds, like a lot.
Hundreds of seasons?
Oh, no, seasons? There's hundreds of Rangers. I think
seasons and then probably 5 or 6 per?
On average, there's 6. Sometimes there's a little bit more, a little bit less, but on average, there's 6. And I think there's been 35 seasons. I should know this, but I don't remember the number. But I would say if there's 35 seasons, I've done maybe a third of them total. But I've also done a bunch of villains and stuff mixed in there too. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to the poster where you eventually have like every single. They're all tiny, And,
I've thought about doing that, but even just one team, because I do a 9x6 headshot, like So like
you should totally do like the floating head thing, the Marvel floating head thing, where you just
Morphin Red, right? And if I tried to put the 6 Rangers together on like an 11x17, and they're so small, and it like I don't know. I like the idea of doing it, but I think it would look like one of those pictures where from a distance you can't tell what it is. You know what I mean? And then you get close, like, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah. It's like the Mallrats picture where it's like it's a sailboat. It's like
Keeman says there's 30 seasons of Power Rangers so far. I thought there was more, but okay. Oh, because I was thinking of the 30th anniversary, but then there's some seasons carried over the same team. I don't know. There's lots.
Yeah, that can always be really tough too, because you'll always have like a random character that was in there like a second, or like they tried a new like thing and then it didn't work out. So it's like you have just like any show that's run that long. It's kind of like I've noticed that with a lot of Doctor Who artists too, like where once you start digging in the rabbit hole of a property that existed that long, like it is hard to get everything right, you know.
And that's also like the fans are going to know if you get the details wrong, first of all. And,
yes.
Which is why it helps if I'm a fan, because I still have to use reference, but I at least kind of have an idea going in at least. But also, no matter how many Rangers I do, I'll inevitably have somebody ask for a Ranger that I don't have, or a villain I don't have, and it's like, I've got literally like 60 Rangers here, and they're like, "Do you have this one?" No, you know, like.
I love it. I love that there's a new issue of Horror A4 coming out. I'm really excited because I feel like it wasn't that long ago where it was supposedly questioned whether you would do it or not. I'm glad that you did, and I think that that is one of the reasons you're able to do it, is just that kind of weird stick-to-itiveness. That is saying that word. Yeah. But okay, when you're like kind of doing this, what's the point in this issue where you lost hope in getting it done, and what's the point where you like what's the ebb and flow of this persistent perseverance? Like if you had to sum it up, like you know.
Well, part of it is life stuff, like because while I was trying to get this issue done, when I hadn't had a lot done, like I had the script done, but I had sort of like just started the layouts and maybe had a couple pages penciled. And around that time, I was having a hard time getting go with it. And it was taking a long time. I definitely got sidetracked because I was finding some success in Power Rangers and things like that. So there's definitely a point where I was still enthusiastic about the comic, and life hadn't hit me yet, because like a bunch of life stuff hits me at some point. And I was just like, oh, I'm going to all these conventions. People are buying my art. I'm meeting the actors. They're putting my art on their table. I'm like, all this fun stuff is happening. And it's weird because I was talking before about short-term reward versus long-term reward. And if TV is a short-term reward versus drawing something, doing a Power Ranger print is a short-term art reward versus doing my own comic, because it did take effort and it is rewarding that people like it and I'm making money, but it's not mine. I'm still sort of standing on the shoulders of giants, as they say, or like riding a train. And, you know, like it's something I'm interested in. I'm proud of the work I'm doing. People like it. But I definitely think I got sidetracked by a lot of that. There was a lot of events where I was getting good response emotionally and financially. And at some point, I think I was like, wow, it's been like 3 or 4 years since issue 2, and I have almost nothing done. And every time I try to go back to it, I'm so rusty that I'll spend like an hour or two and maybe kind of get part of one page penciled. But if I spend an hour or two doing another Power Rangers headshot, I'll get 30 likes and I'll sell 3 of them. And, you know, it just like it was more reward there. Yeah. And right around the time I think I started pulling myself together and like, let me try to do 30 minutes a day or an hour a day or whatever. Like a bunch of stuff. I just did a video on my channel, actually. They're all old videos, but today I put up one like that I filmed today where I essentially said like, I was having a hard time for a lot of reasons. Then I had a kid. There was COVID. There was death in the family. We moved. My mom moved. I got some health issues. I got depression. So like I was already not doing a good job being on top of it and feeling like, what am I doing? I got to get my head straight. And then life was like, nope, you know? Yeah. And then I just was like, every couple weeks or months, maybe I'd kind of pretend I was still working on it. And some point I really started working on it. And this is probably around when I was talking to you saying like, I don't know if I'm going to finish it, because I was putting in 30 minutes, an hour here and there on a somewhat regular basis, but I just wasn't seeing progress. And it just, part of it is that I wasn't putting in quite as much as I did later. But part of it, I think, is just that I was just so rusty. I was just so rusty that just doing panels and backgrounds and just like it wasn't like I couldn't draw, but comics is a different muscle. And I felt like the little bit of time I was putting in, I was spending all that time trying to remember how to draw comics. And I think I had a turning point when I just realized, like, I didn't find anything quite as satisfying as doing my own stuff. And I wanted to be able to say I finished it. I want to get to the end of the book. Even if I never do another comic in my life, I want to say, hey, here's my book I did. And once I kind of had some time and I had that, just priorities in my brain shifted and life opened up a little bit where I got that pocket of time. And like I said, in the beginning, it was a little hard, but I kind of said to myself, if life gives me a little pocket of time, I'm going to work on the comic. And I think I even gave myself a trapdoor, like escape of like, well, if I do this for a few months and I'm not getting anywhere, then I'll quit, you know? But of course, once I did it for a few months, I'm like, okay, I could really do this. It's going to get done. And then I found out about this this kaiju convention in Brooklyn that like an associate of mine is doing. He's not a friend, but I know him. And I'm like, I could stay with a friend in Brooklyn. I heard this was a really good show last year, and this year's going to be even bigger. Yeah. If I work, I think I could get it done by June. I'm doing it. And like, so it all lined up and I was already going to do it. And then it gave myself a goal and a deadline. And then that's when it really crystallized. And that's when I became like a comic book artist again.
I love that. I think I've mentioned this to you before too, like with 2 stories, like my first graphic novel, I spent like, I think I missed like 3 years of it. There was about like a good 2 or 3 years where I wasn't working on comics because I had just started as an art director. Right. And then my son was still really little. And so it was just like prioritizing, you know, just kind of at that point treading water, you know. Yeah. And then a similar reason for coming back, because I also just started realizing like I was super depressed. I wasn't like, there were a lot of things that like ugly things that rear their head when you're not doing the thing you feel like you're here to be doing. And so like that, I'm glad you kind of came to that because I think it's I think even if it doesn't end up being like the most financially lucrative thing, I think it's spiritually fulfilling.
I assume I'm not going to make money on this.
yeah, but I think there's things that are more important than money sometimes, you know, or things like that will fuel things that will make money, you know. So yeah, I'm glad. Also, it's my favorite stuff you do. So it's like my favorite stuff is for A4 for me because I like seeing, you know, I like seeing your voice, you know, thrown in there to that extent. It's really cool. So
thank you.
I'm excited. You guys who are in the chats, if you haven't yet, you should go to the Horror A4. Right, and it's a pre-launch. You can it's not called a pre-launch, is it?
It is. It's a pre-launch notification. Just lets you know when it really goes. It doesn't cost anything, you know, but I think it helps the algorithm the more people sign up for it.
Yeah, it just notifies you when it goes live.
Yeah,
you know. So I mean, that's the first step, and then once it goes live, you know, click on the campaign, check it out, and then hopefully back it.
And it's not live yet. But there is another Kickstarter that's live. What is that one again, Scott?
YoungandtheDead.com. Yeah, I haven't looked and see if we hit that, but yeah, we're getting really close to that stretch goal. So I want to give everyone a 3D print, you know, and it's
I love it.
I'm sticking on it, so we got a little over a week, you know.
So right around when yours is ending, that's around when mine will be starting.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So you guys got to sign up for Horror A4. You got to back Young and the Dead, and keep in mind, like these indie things, like this is just a small taste of like the experience a lot of indie artists go through to make these things. They don't exist without like. It is hard to be the tree falling in a forest and not making a sound. And so if you're out there, like, you know, help us make a bigger sound and like support indie books. And support what Gaz is doing because it's my favorite stuff Gaz does. Like, and a thing that'll keep that fueled is like, you know, those things being funded. So, you know, make sure you guys are out there and support.
We reinvest, like Scott and I and other indie artists. He wants to get better printing. He wants to give away things. Same with me. Like the stretch goals are like, I want to make stickers. I want to do this. I want to do that. Like, I've kind of been transparent that like if it doesn't fund, I'll probably still put the book out. But I'm not going to do all this extra stuff. You know what I mean? Like if I get extra money, I'm not sitting on a pile of money. I'm making more stuff, you know. And I
We'll
think
get a
lot
more
of
beautiful book. You know, at the end of the day, that's the key. Is like you want a beautiful book from people, and those don't just appear. So I think you gotta get a beautiful book and cool swag and extra stuff. You know, yeah, I'm really excited about it. Cool. I don't know, Scott. Well, Scott, Gaz, anything we didn't touch on that we kind of should?
I mean, we could go forever, but it's been an hour and a half. I think we both plugged
I
our
know.
stuff. And
I know you're in California, Gaz. I wish we lived a little closer because I could imagine you and I like going to a coffee shop and killing just like 8 hours just babbling. Like,
sure.
'cause it's always fun to
I
talk with you.
think every time we talk, it's like there's probably someplace halfway between us we should meet, and we both agree that would be a great idea, and never talk about it again.
Yeah, we should though. We'll figure it out.
agree.
Here's the cool thing. I finally get the big benefit of teaching high school. I mean, there's obviously the benefit of I really enjoy like seeing young artists grow and stuff like that. But also, I get all summer off, so I will hit you up during the summer.
You know what? Please do. And you know what occurs to me? I could have asked you about this, but there's a thing in LA I'm going to tomorrow. It's an Arc from retrospective because of the new book that's out, hosted by Art Spiegelman and Matt Groening. And like,
that'll be.
I'm
good.
going already, and but it's like, I mean, look into it. Maybe there's tickets. I don't know, but it's in LA tomorrow.
Ooh,
yeah.
Ooh, that sounds amazing. I've seen
that's
Spiegelman.
An hour and a half drive for me, but I'm like, I'll do it.
Oh man, I've seen Spiegelman speak twice, and each time it was like one of the most inspiring things. So I can't imagine. And Crumb that's just like a.
He's not going to be there. He was
legend.
supposed to be there, but they're going to be talking about the new book and stuff. But yeah,
that's exciting.
Yeah.
That might be safer. I'm joking. Crumb not showing up would be safer. If you guys don't watch the documentary on Crumb, it's like one of the weirdest, most interesting documentaries in comics. All right, Cat Base. I don't.
Cat Base 3 is our house.
Okay, you're always welcome. I'm sorry, I didn't know you called it Cat Base 3. I don't know how I missed
because
that.
We have cats, and this is the third place we've lived with the cats.
I like that. I actually like that. Dog Base. I don't know. This will be like Dog Base 7 or something like that. But Base 7 will meet up with Cat Base 3. That will make it like a space flight or something. Yeah. I think we've kind of covered it pretty well. Gaz, thanks for joining us, and thanks
for having me.
Horror A4. You guys really at least go to that link and just check out the art. Okay, it's so cool. So, Gaz, one time where everybody support your upcoming Kickstarter and also follow your work and stuff like that.
You want me to plug myself again?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's just a closing one.
On Kickstarter, thehorrora4.com will take you there, or you can go to Kickstarter, look for Gazbot, or look for thehorrora4.com issue 3. You could see issue 1 and 2 were funded, and they're on there, and you can get issue 1 and 2 through the campaign if you decide you want to get just issue 1 or get all 3. That is available once it goes live. Other than that, I have an Etsy store. You can follow me on YouTube and Instagram, Blue Sky, Kara. But all of that is less important than going to the Kickstarter and just signing up for the notification or sharing it, which costs nothing.
There's a link. There's a link in the description for the Kickstarter, which is pretty easy. Gaz made it easy. There's a custom URL, thehorrora4.com. Go there. But if you don't want to type that, there's a link in the description. There's also a link. Follow Gaz on YouTube because he's got great blogs. There's a link.
100%. Yeah, my favorite.
When you get caught up, and how does that work? Because are you still recording new stuff, and then you're just recording new stuff, knowing that by the time it gets around, it's going to be a little old?
It's a slow. I started it with like a 6-month lag. Now it's like a 4-month lag. So it is when I have free time, I do more videos, and I cut some of it. It's like I don't need to put this stuff in, so it is slowly catching up. Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. All right, Scott. Oh well, Scott's gonna close this out. So, on my channel, you know where to find me. Make sure you're following Gaz's stuff. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications. Consider getting 2 stories in Jacob's apartment. But after backing these things, because Kickstarters time frame, my books are going to be around for a while, so like you can get those after, but make sure you're supporting indie comics and supporting these guys. And then
True
also,
Stories is my favorite thing that Josh has done.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to check out cool music, there's like 5 albums on Spotify, completely free, like on most music streaming platforms. You can look under this name and keep an eye out for No Saboteurs. We finished crazy punk rock, just insane collaborative collage that's, this giant, the size of a vinyl, a little bit larger. And so that means that we're one step closer to releasing the next No Saboteurs album, and it's literally the best music I've ever written with my friend. And I'm really excited about it. So make sure you're following that stuff on free streaming platforms. No Saboteurs and Joshua Kimball. Scott, where can everybody find your stuff? Where do they need to go to? What's the most important place they can go? And then also, how do they keep track of the crazy train that is the Artcasters?
Yeah, so the first question, just go to youngandthedead.com. And if you haven't already backed the Kickstarter, like I said, we're super close to that first stretch goal, which gets everyone at the physical level a cool 3D print plus 3D glasses, plus it unlocks what the next stretch goal is, which I hope we hit, but we'll see. And so yeah, let's keep this ball rolling because the time is running out. If you've been thinking about it, now's a good time to finally back. So
and you're also hooking us up, like Gaz and I have backed it. Like you're hooking us up too, because we'll get cooler stuff. Like the more people who back it, so do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how it works. And then so the Artcasters, we do the show every single week. It rotates from Josh's channel to my channel, different guest every week, different topic. But if you want to be notified of when we're gonna go live and everything, because that day, every once in a while that day can change or whatever. But it gets a little confusion just the way we set it up. Yes, he always does this good thing. All you have to do, I gotta just block his thing out so he's not distracted. No, just
I can't do the show and not put my toys in the camera. That's my thing.
The link in the description. And then you can join us. It'll notify you when we're about to go live, and we don't spam you or anything like that. It's like 30 minutes ahead of time. We usually let you guys know. So do that. Link in the description for that. And thank you to everyone in the chat. And I'll let Josh close it up. I don't have any
bad influence.
A little figurine that you pose, and then all this stuff in my back. Yeah.
I love it. Thanks, guys. Oh yeah, that's true.
What do you got?
That's true.
Oh, well, you probably have this. Let's see.
Yeah, we gotta do one like little brief toy show off.
His little wings fell off, but
yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, here we go. Here we go, guys.
He's probably got the original, I'm sure. Is that the same one or is that the original?
Same exact one.
Oh yeah.
Yours
doesn't have the wings on it either.
What wings?
Oh no, mine's got this is the.
Oh, the Jet Scrander.
Yeah.
That was a separate piece.
Yeah.
Wait, is that the repro?
Yeah, this is the new one that just.
Oh no, this is from like 1978 or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's what I said. Yours is the original. So this one's pretty much got everything that because there were so many different versions. This is the best version. It's got the brain ship that comes out. It's got all the rockets. It's got different fists that you can switch out. It's got
I think it's exactly the same, except back in the day the Scrander was separate, and I don't have
It's got the sword. It's got the upgraded sword. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, that's much better. Yeah, I got this little.
Yeah, I got the little swords in here, but in his leg. But yeah.
Welcome to Jumbo Machinder Shogun Warriors talk.
I had that guy when I was a kid. And I had him, and I had what's his name?
Radine?
Not Radine.
Dragon?
No.
Guy King.
With the horns.
Guy King. Daikimura Guy King.
Yes. Yeah. So I had those two. Yeah, when I was a kid.
I didn't have
And
any
I
when I
got them
was a kid.
secondhand, so they didn't have all the stuff. You know,
Right.
I was missing the missiles and everything, but
Josh is going to
I
get a
love
robot.
it's actually I have it in.
I don't have a
It's
Mazinga Z, but I filled it on the spot by Chris Kiaju. It said, "Where's Josh's robot?" Always next to me. All right, always.
Yep.
Anyhow.
Somewhere I've got to orange on it.
That's
You got
fantastic.
it. It's the one of the best animated movies ever made.
Oh, it's
All right,
Vin Diesel's best role until he did Groot, maybe.
dude. Actually, I'd say probably his best role. I'm gonna say best. That ending part with Superman. If you didn't choke up, like you're not a man. All right. Have a good one, guys. We really appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. Again, I'm really excited about A4 just as a fan of Gaz's work. So, all right.
I'm sure it's going to
See
be
you
worth
guys
the wait.
next time. Yeah, it will be.
Thank you, everybody.